Hey guys, welcome to this video on alcoholic or ethanol fermentation, which is one of the two types of fermentation that we're going to cover. So if we were to start with basically a summary of what alcoholic fermentation will yield us, we will start from one glucose molecule, which will be broken down into two ethanol molecules, and we'll also get 2 ATP and produce 2 carbon dioxide molecules in that process. I do want to add, as a side note, that in the case of glucose, we're dealing with a monosaccharide, right? But if we have to deal with polysaccharides, like for example, starch, in that case, what has to happen is, well, because yeast cannot break down the starch in fermentation, we have to let the enzymes first intervene and break down that polysaccharide into monosaccharides so that it can then proceed with fermentations. So enzymes must intervene in this case. But for monosaccharides, that wouldn't be. Or at least for glucose, that is. Now, let's take a look at the detail when it comes to alcoholic fermentation. So, we first of all start off with glucose, which is a 6-carbon molecule. So C6H12O6. This is our good old glucose molecule. And then, like cellular respiration, it is going to go through, that's right, glycolysis. I'll use a different color. And the reason why glycolysis happens for fermentation while other steps, cellular respiration, don't, is because glycolysis doesn't need oxygen. Does not need oxygen. Does not need. Then, in glycolysis, you'll remember that, well, we have NAD plus turn into NADH plus a hydrogen ion. And also remember that an ADP molecule turns into ATP. But we got the numbers mixed up here, right? Because remember, glucose, what happens, is broken down into 2 pyruvic acids. So what happens is that we actually should have something like this. And here, of course, we're talking about, remember, we invest 2 ATP, produce 4 ATP, so we get a net gain of 2 ATP for entire glycolysis, so involving 2 pyruvic acids. Then, after glycolysis, and from glycolysis we got 2 pyruvic acids, 2 ATP, and 2 NADH from one glucose molecule. We are going to, first of all, let's draw the 2 pyruvic acids we have. CCC, CCC, each being a 3-carbon molecule. We will then go through decarboxylation. So this is the decarboxylation phase or stage. And in decarboxylation, we're going to lose 2 carbon dioxide, and these two, what used to be 3 carbon molecules, are now going to be turned into 2 carbon molecules. So C2 each. And we call them acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde. And finally, we're not done yet. So let's make some, I hope we have enough room there. These 2 acetaldehydes, which chemically you can represent as CH3CHO, and is a substance, by the way, that is produced when ethanol produced when ethanol is oxidized. And this also has to do with alcohol, right? The alcohol we drink, acetaldehyde, is what causes that hangover, or involved with the hangover you feel after drinking a lot. We are going to go through an important phase which we call the regeneration of NAD+. And so these 2 acetaldehydes are going to turn into a different type of 2 carbon molecules called ethanol. And in that process of turning the acetaldehyde into ethanol, we are going to have an equation where the NADH is going to turn into 2 NAD+, 1 from each acetaldehyde. And so the reason why this regeneration is important is because, well, if we have this, then this can then be used again to drive glycolysis. And so again, this NAD+ will be reused in glycolysis, and so it becomes reusable, it becomes sort of a cycle. And we can sustain this reaction. And so that was alcoholic fermentation, or ethanol fermentation in a nutshell. If we learned that starting from 1 glucose, we get 2 ethanol along with 2 ATP and 2 carbon dioxide. And the way we get there is, well, the glucose turns into 2 pyruvic acids, which then turns into 2 acetaldehydes, which then turn into 2 ethanol, and in that process we have NAD+ and also carbon dioxide play a role, be produced, so forth, as well as ATP, which is produced in the glycolysis stage. And so that was, again, alcoholic fermentation, and I'll see you guys in the next video.